The college football experience, Big 12 2024 conference release breakdown, schedule release breakdown. I'm sorry. Episode on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Play Underdog Pick'em for a chance to win 100 times the amount of money you enter. Promo code SGPN at underdogfantasy.com for a 100% deposit match. We're also brought to you by Hall of Fame Bets. Yes, the sports betting research platform for parlays, player props, and game lines. Download the Hall of Fame Bets app or visit hofbets.com. Use that promo code SGPN to get 50% off your first month and start making smarter bets today, people. We're also brought to you by the NASCAR Gambling Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, start your engines and enter the free Daytona 500 contest for a chance to win $100 cash and a $100 SGPN gift card. Only at sportsgamblingpodcast.com/Daytona. Once again, that's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/Daytona.
This is Mike Leach, head football coach at Mississippi State, and you're listening to SGPN. Let it ride.
Yes. Woo! Welcome to the college football experience. Big 12, Big 16, whatever you want to call it. Big 12 2024 schedule release breakdown. We're going to go team by team in the Big 12. And which is 16 teams if you didn't know this year, right? 16 teams, I believe. Yeah, 16 teams. It's gonna be fun. I'm actually more intrigued for this one than I was Big 10 or ACC, but maybe because my Buffs are in there, maybe because they have lit home environments. I don't know, but we're gonna talk all about it. If you're wondering who the hell you're listening to, that's fair. My name is Colby Swinging Database Dan, aka Pick Dundee. That's not a pick. This is a pick.
He was raised in the land down under, where a man thinks on his feet, speaks with his fists, and lives by his wits.
When Dundee happened, he was a superstar.
I smoke and I drink and I don't have stress and I'm healthy.
I was sitting downstairs reading a bedtime story to White Tiger, right? And White Tiger told me, Dad, fuck is this new Big 12? There's 16 teams. He said, I'm excited for it. Even though UCF and Colorado in the same conference seems a little wacky. But he said, I'm excited for it. Just let the games begin. Shout out to White Tiger.
Already talking, is he?
Already talking. I am joined by my co-host. This guy is in he's at home, I think, here.
I was just in Nick Saban's office a second ago, but now I'm at home.
Yeah. It's good you switch it up. Get out of there. Give it up for former JMU Duke defensive back, the burrito eating, sideline kiss stealing, wheeling and dealing, Patty C in the place to be.
Hi-oh. Well,
let's get it going. Let's get it going. Shout out to the Paint Connect in the chat. Let's go, guys. Fuck yes, let's go.
Yeah, I'll tell you
We're
what.
also joined by what's that?
We're gonna get into it. I'm excited about this too, but it's a little more nip tuck. You know, there's not a ton that separates some of these schedules, so I think it may be more important.
I will say, I still had a hard time breaking down. This and the ACC were harder to me than the Big 10 and SEC as far as like Big 10. There's like Ohio State's schedule is so easy and one of their teams compared to like this one was like razor thin. And this conference, I think, plays the most away games. So it makes it even harder. We got Fred Durst in the chat. Give me something to break. Love that movie you directed with Travolta. Definitely better than all of your hits in my opinion. What was it was like Fanatic.
Yeah.
I thought it was better than most of your hits, but look, we're joined by third man in the booth. If you're watching right now, youtube.com/the college experience. Get on over there and subscribe. Hit that like button. Give it up for the rooftop IPA drinking, homebrew making, tobacco road living, the free lock giving, former Herndon Basketball League MVP. Give it up for NC Nick in the place to be.
There we go. What's going on, guys?
Oh yeah. I mean, life is good. Back in the saddle.
So the Big 12 loses Texas and Oklahoma, but gains what we thought before. It was like, oh, they're gaining UCF, Cincinnati, BYU, but no,
and Houston.
They're gaining. Yeah, in Houston. Sorry, no, they're gaining Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah. It's a lot to unpack there. See, Nick, your internet looks awful, and there. Shout out to the Red Roof Inn in Bowie, Maryland, if I had to guess.
Not too far off. It looks fine.
Doesn't sound fine.
Though. He might have to.
No.
He might have to
here.
exit and come back. He might have to exit and come back.
He's still with
anyway.
me.
Let's pull the plug on him for a second, and maybe he could jump back in when his shit starts working. This hotel internet thing's a problem. Last time it was Virginia. Now he's in Maryland. And shout out to Jeff Sharp. He says, show the Cyclones some respect. Let's go. And hey, I thought Matt Campbell did great last year, considering he lost his whole team. Started a bunch of freshmen, and I have them rated as a top 40 team heading into the new year here. So we'll see. NC Nick will be back in a second. And shout out to GBF Farm saying, I love that you're going to break down all the G7 conferences as well. That's funny. We are joined. Let's see if NC Nick is back. Man, what's up, buddy?
See, what I like to do is have both of my computers up. So I got stats on the other, but I guess this hotel internet just doesn't have the bandwidth. So I've disconnected one computer.
I don't know if it's helping.
So hopefully,
I don't know
that's
if it's
the last
helping.
problem we'll have.
Yeah.
No.
There you go.
A little bit.
Definitely. We'll see. We'll see. Before I jump into the Big 12, we got news. Bill O'Brien was hired by Boston College. I know Patty C's been calling for this. Patty C's a prophet when calling for certain coaches to somewhere, because he called for this like 7 years ago. It happened. It worked out. I personally think it was a shitty hire, but we'll see. Maybe I'm mistaken, but to me, I thought they could have done a lot better, especially with the coach that landed in Bill O'Brien's job that, he worked for like 2 weeks there in Columbus. But your thoughts on Bill O'Brien to Boston College? Patty C, I'll let you go first.
Well, again, like I said, I think this is from a cultural fit, so to speak. I know that's complete horseshit most of the time, but you can't ask for a better fit than a native Bostonite with an Irish last name, some Northeast coaching experience, obviously coming from the Patriots, and a guy that has proven that he can crank out 7 and 8 win seasons at Penn State, which is all you can really hope for.
A lot easier at Penn State than it is at Boston College.
I don't know that it's that much easier in the current ACC if you're any good at coaching, because A, there are better coaches probably in the Big Ten, and B, there are more talented teams. So I think
Big Ten has a lot of dead weight though.
This year,
I mean, yes,
yeah, it's definitely this year.
But he wasn't dealing with a pedophile. He's not going to be dealing with a pedophile situation at Boston College that we're aware of. So
I don't know.
But to say, don't pump the brakes on that. Don't get too over the top there. NC Nick, your thoughts on Bill O'Brien to Boston College?
I just think it's kind of an average, boring hire. I don't see him crushing it there overall. I think he's an average coach. If it wasn't for that run with the Patriots, he wouldn't have gotten those opportunities that he did. And really, how much of the Patriots' success was due to him, I think that's debatable. So, as much as I agree with what Patty's saying, it is fun to have an O'Brien coaching BC. I just don't know how good of a coach he is. So I think it's an average hire.
Let me push back a little bit.
Oh,
go ahead. What are you going to say?
No, I'm saying to me, it just reeks of Lovie Smith to Illinois, Herm Edwards to Arizona State. NFL coaches don't work in college football for the most part.
Not always, although he did fine given the circumstances at Penn State. I thought, it wasn't like unbelievable, but it was a pretty tough situation he walked into. And
it was a tough situation, but they still, come on, it's Penn State. They still go out and get talent. You know what I mean? They were dropping bags. You know what I mean?
He did make Christian Hackenberg a
second round pick.
Yeah, that's impressive. And then look, he went to Houston as an NFL coach. What was he? A winning team 3 out of 4 years. It's not Jim Harbaugh, but it's solid results. You give Jim Harbaugh credit for going to the NFL and having success. So I think you should.
But
he
was a college coach first, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Like Bill O'Brien is an NFL coach going to college.
Sure, but I think
you know what I mean.
It translates well enough, and I think from a recruiting standpoint, I mean, let me ask you this: what is a better coach from not only an X's and O's and a clout standpoint that Boston College has had at the time of the hire, but also from a potential recruiting standpoint? Again, I don't know if he's a powerhouse recruiter, but his name alone in the Boston area and the Northeast should carry some weight with recruits.
I mean, I just think to me, I could have give you a list of 25 coaches.
But Chip Kelly didn't, he went to Ohio State.
But Boston College never offered him anything.
Yeah, that's true. But why would he leave UCLA?
Because have you heard any? Have you followed through on this story?
The
schedule, they have no money, right? And get this, even with them jumping to the Big Ten, the amount of money you think they're going to get, they owe the University of Cal $5 million every year. So that cuts into it, as well as your expense to travel and the fact that he had it with administration that didn't put football first. So there was more than meets the eye there. And
so, when you think he would have taken a major step down in terms of clout from UCLA to go to Boston College, potentially?
I mean, he took a major step down, and we've never heard that before, where a sitting coach, him and Gary Anderson of Oregon State are the only two I can ever think of that left a Power 5 job to be a coordinator somewhere.
Yeah, it's
within the same conference.
But it is a coordinator at the most, one of the top 3 schools in the country, really.
Still, I mean, to me, he would have taken the Boston. I think he would have took any P5 job. P4 job, whatever you want to say.
Yeah. Maybe they should have given him a look. That would have been a better hire. I agree.
Well, there's a lot out there to me better than I would have taken a shot at some of the younger coaches. You know what I mean? That we just saw GJ Kinney kill it at Texas State in 1 year. I'll take a shot at some of these younger coaches over. To me, it's kind of a stale hire to me. But hey, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Boston College and it works out. Now, let's talk about UCLA. Chip Kelly takes the offensive coordinator job at Ohio State. Buy your futures on the Buckeyes to win the national championship now because they're the most talented team. And guess Ryan Day was his college quarterback. He used to coach at New Hampshire when Ryan Day played quarterback for him. So the cows have come home to roost, to quote the great Frank Drebin. Ohio State's just loaded this offseason. The moves they have made. This is a blessing in disguise if you're Ohio State. You had Bill O'Brien as offensive coordinator. Well, now you have Chip Kelly. I think you completely upgraded at offensive coordinator, and I think he's going to get that run game going with both those running backs, and it's going to be nasty. And
Harbaugh's gone.
Yes, and Harbaugh's gone, and their schedule is butter soft next year. I think I just went through all the Big 12 schedule, and we're about to. I think Ohio State's schedule is way easier than pretty much every school in the Big 12s. So we'll get into that, but UCLA went out and hired Deshaun Foster. Now, some say, he had been the running backs coach with Chip Kelly. He just left for a Las Vegas Raiders job. Now he comes back. The team loves him, but this reeks. You could say, this is the Dabo Sweeney potential here. This is a guy that was never a coordinator. And this guy knows what it takes. He's from the area. He's from Orange County, California. Maybe he can tap into all the recruiting there, but this reeks of them being broke, in my opinion. This was a hire they had to do from having no money. Patty C, your thoughts on Deshaun Foster being the head coach of the UCLA Bruins?
I think you hit it on the head. That's kind of what it feels like. It's not that yes, he lacks the qualifications that you would like in terms of coordinator or head coach experience. Certainly, there's huge potential from a recruiting standpoint and a culture standpoint and a loyalty standpoint. Maybe that's something they wanted to emphasize after Chip Kelly leaves them high and dry. But you're UCLA. You're in Los Angeles now with Big Ten money coming in. You should be able to get a big name, not a position coach.
But maybe it's a blessing in disguise. Maybe it works out. So, Shane Beamer, I don't know if you would grade him as a good hire, but he was a guy that never was a coordinator.
And also, the Big Ten money hasn't come in yet. Maybe they need a couple years, to get their financial situation in order. And then if Foster doesn't work out after a couple years, then maybe you go make a splash expensive hire.
It's true.
Yeah, perhaps. All right, look, let's switch to the Big 12. Let's talk about this brand new conference. But before I do that, I want to tell you folks out there that the college football experience is brought to you by the Daytona 500 contest. Rev up those engines. NASCAR's back. Check out the NASCAR Gambling Podcast with Rod Villagomez and Cody Zeeb. They have you covered for all things NASCAR and racing, from trucks to the Cup, IndyCar to F1. This show gives you the drivers to watch and the most profitable picks for the weekend of racing. Enter for free Daytona 500 contest for $100 SGPN gift card and 100 smackaroos in cash. Go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/Daytona. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/Daytona. And remember, as always, folks, too, rubbing is racing. No two. Just rubbin's racing. We're also brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy has a way to play alongside your favorite fantasy players all season long. They got NBA, NHL, college basketball, college football. Simply pick higher or lower in your favorite players' fantasy stats and cash in. You can win 100 times the amount of money you enter with some of their spicy plays. So what are you doing, folks? Watch along, make picks, and make some extra cash on Underdog's mobile app or website. Underdog Fantasy with the promo code TCE SGPN. Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. Once again, that's Underdog Fantasy promo code TCE SGPN. All right, we are back on the college football experience. Big 12 schedule release. And look, before I go team by team, I want Brett Yormark. See, Brett Yormark's a guy from New York City. Well, here's what I know about New York City. Great stand-up scene, great food. They don't know shit about college sports. All right? They really don't, right? And it shows right here because before I dive in team by team, what an epic fail. First off, Yormark's trying to expand. He's with Sankey now, trying to expand the NCAA tournament past 68 teams. Ridiculous. But the rivalry week factor here. You want to talk about an epic fail by the Big 12. Just an epic fail.
Did they get a single one right?
Arizona State.
They got the sunflower or the Territorial Cup, the Dust Bowl. This is absolutely awful. I mean, I guess you could say Farmageddon's okay. I don't like it the final week personally, but what a fucking fail. Utah at UCF. YouTube.com/the college experience. West Virginia at Texas Tech. Oklahoma State at Colorado. I mean, I guess that one's all right because they're old Big 8 foes. Houston at BYU. No. TCU at Cincinnati. No. Kansas at Baylor. No. What a fucking fail. What a fail. Look, Brett Yormark, if you want to pick up the phone and dial 1-800-PICK-DUNDEE, I do have you covered for what it should look like. Here's what it should look like, folks.
There we go.
Oh, right there. How easy of a fix is that? Arizona State at Arizona, which is the one he got correct. Kansas at Kansas State. BYU at Utah, the Holy War. West Virginia at Cincinnati. Wouldn't that be great? We don't have the backyard brawl at the end of the year, but you can kind of form your own new one.
Right.
Oh, TCU.
Wasn't the regional dance partner with West Virginia a huge reason why Cincinnati was being considered in the first place?
Yes. It doesn't make any sense. TCU and Baylor already is a rivalry. Hey, they've been playing since the 1800s. So load that one up. Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, I think is better than Oklahoma State, Colorado personally. And then Houston, UCF. That's the only one that doesn't have a ton of PAL behind it, but they're old AAC and CUSA foes. They played against each other in the CUSA, then the AAC, so they have more history than almost every other school on here. And then Iowa State at Colorado, their original Big 7 schools before the Big 8 happened. That, to me, is the way the end of the season should look. Am I wrong, NC Nick?
No, you're not wrong. Better than the previous one. So especially the left-hand side of that starts to tail off there a little bit, but overall, I think you're definitely right.
Well, the only other thing that I would say is, like, if you wanted to do Farmageddon, then you could load Kansas and Colorado. That would work too. But Patty C, what do you make of this idea that Brett Yormark clearly doesn't know college sports? Just give me hey Brett, no offense, but just give me a call. Give me a call. We can set this up really easily. Patty C, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with you across the board. The only one that I think is questionable is Oklahoma State. Colorado seems like it's fine, but I agree that Oklahoma State, who they have now, UCF ending the year, or no.
Oklahoma State is at Colorado in the real one.
Okay, in the real one.
The one I'm saying should be Iowa State at Colorado and Oklahoma State at Texas Tech.
Yeah, Oklahoma State, Colorado seems fine. Colorado at Iowa State, Colorado seems fine, but ultimately, I think those are about a push. Everything else is definitely an improvement on your model. I mean, TCU Baylor, they're essentially arch rivals. I mean, it goes back and forth whether TCU or SMU is TCU's rival, but TCU Baylor is a big ass rivalry with some pretty recent big history. That absolutely should be a featured rivalry, and I don't even know when they're playing.
They're dropping the ball. I mean, while Ohio State and Michigan will be playing, and all these other great rivalries on the final week. First off, the Holy War. How do you fuck that up? That is, to me, the best rivalry that they have right now. That is the best rivalry that they have. The Sunflower Showdown's great. Farmageddon's fun. TCU Baylor's great. I also think TCU Texas Tech's fun, but you're dropping the ball here. You're dropping the ball. The Holy War has as much animosity as almost any rivalry in the country. You should lean into that. You got to lean into that.
Well, maybe they're zigging while everyone else is zagging. Maybe they say, okay, let's put our big rivalries throughout the season and capture more viewers' eyes instead of competing with Ohio State, Michigan.
No.
I think it's obvious that they did not emphasize this week. It doesn't look like they made a point to.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Compared to any other week. So for them, I guess it wasn't important for whatever reason.
Yeah. Dick Gersberger says Colorado, Nebraska. That's what I remember. Well, look, I would love for that to be a non-con game on the final game of the season every year, much like the Backyard Brawl should do. And the Apple Cup, the Civil War, all that good stuff. But I doubt that happens because idiots are in charge. Look, let's jump into it. NC Nick, I think you might have froze up again, but no, he's back now. He's back now. Let's talk about team number one. Before I jump in, what was your guys' thought breaking down these conferences? Nick, Big 12, was this fun for you? Did you think, man, I got no idea who's winning this thing? What would you break down?
I mean, I think it's wide open. I think there's Utah and everybody else behind them, maybe. I think there's some intriguing new matchups, but I do think the loss of Texas and Oklahoma hurts. There's not a lot of national pizzazz over these games. Like, what's the biggest game of the year in the Big 12 now? I don't know.
Utah, BYU, probably.
But not the best rivalry. I'm not talking about like the biggest game, the most impactful for the race in the Big 12. So on one hand, maybe that's good. There's a lot of parity. There's a lot of good teams, maybe not any great teams. At least, I mean, Utah's history on the football field is as good as Texas or Oklahoma recently. But I don't know. It's lacking a little bit of pizzazz, I'd say. Is that fair, Patty?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there is Arizona, Utah. I mean, if you're trying to talk about, off the cuff favorites, you would think Arizona, even without
Kansas State. I would
too.
True. Yeah, Oklahoma State. Yeah.
And Oklahoma State. Yeah. And so if you're talking about those teams and who's on their schedule, I guess Utah has a road trip at Oklahoma State, and then the following week they have Arizona. There's a couple games, that they don't jump out at you as, okay, here are 2 national championship contenders, but one of the teams is going to the playoffs, and all of the, especially the likes of Utah with Cam Rising coming back for his 75th year, they could win some playoff games. So,
I don't get.
Sorry.
When you keep that in mind, some of those games could be pretty exciting.
Look, I think there's a lot of exciting games. The Truck Stop Conference is killer, in my opinion.
Let me tell you this though.
Yeah.
The non-conference slate in this entire conference is beyond pathetic.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
you have to remember they do play 9 conference games.
I thought this was one of the hardest non-cons.
Well, you yourself rated top 40 teams, and the only ones that I see are Penn State, which is against West Virginia, and then Oklahoma.
Wait. West Virginia plays 11 Power Fives. They get Pitt and Penn State.
But Pitt didn't make your top 40.
I know that, but it doesn't matter. You're playing the backyard brawl. Like,
it's a cool game.
Non-con is awesome.
Look, what I'm just saying is games that have national, implications and relevance for both teams, as power players. It's pretty limited. I mean, SMU is the only other top 40 team. SMU, Oklahoma, and Penn State. I want to say SMU has 2 games to their credit against the Big 12. Maybe they're trying to still get in there eventually once the ACC crumbles. But I'll say this. You keyed it on the top 40. I had a really hard time. I based it on last year, and I don't think I think there's a shit ton of teams. Like, I didn't put Texas Tech in the top 40. They could be in there. Colorado could end up in the top 40. UCF I didn't have in the top 40. Baylor I didn't have in the top 40. I'm talking about non-conference though.
I know, but I thought, considering you have a 3-game, first off, they played more away games than any conference we've done so far. Any conference, like almost every team plays 6 away games. I think 14 of the 16 play 6 away games. Yeah, the 9-game conference slate is inherently way more difficult than even the 1 game suggests it is. It makes a world of difference. So, and when you look at some of the FCS opponents compared to the Big Ten or the SEC, Colorado is hosting North Dakota State. Oklahoma State is hosting South Dakota State. BYU is hosting Southern Illinois, who's a very good program in the Missouri Valley. They went out and scheduled, to me, that's true, great FCS opponents. Yeah.
Also, one more thing. I mean, one thing I like to do is try to find out like the best quadrant or the best 4 teams in the conference and the worst 4. It was kind of hard to do that, but and then when you look at one team schedule, how many of the best 4 are they playing? How many of the worst 4? So is it fair to say the best 4, Utah, Arizona, Oklahoma State, Kansas State?
At this point, yes. I think that's fair.
The Arizona one is questionable. They're bringing in a brand new head coach. Their whole staff left. That's the one I would be very weary of.
Yeah.
Cincinnati.
Speaking of Cincinnati, they're the
bottom tier. Yeah, they're the worst team. That's what to me, you want Cincinnati. And I'll even say this. I was thinking Cincinnati, Houston, but as I was doing this exercise and I was doing some homework on Houston, they brought their whole staff from Tulane. Like, they're gonna be good. I think think that team has talent, and you put Willie Fritz there. I think that could be, I'm looking at it as the second worst team. And I'm like, but is it the second worst team with Willie Fritz there?
Wait, is Pratt coming with them? Did Pratt end up going to Houston?
I think he went pro. I think he went pro. Yeah.
So if you're looking at record from last year, there's 6 teams that could be in the bottom 4. I'd argue that BYU and Colorado probably shouldn't be. So my bottom 4 is Cincinnati, Baylor, Houston, Arizona State.
See, and this is where it's tricky, is Baylor has a tendency to have a shitty year and then an awesome year, right? Arizona State, one thing I thought, Kenny Dillingham, I thought they were playing way better towards the end of the year than they were in the beginning of the year. So, but I would have to agree with you in that regard. I would say maybe they're going to be decent this year, but based off last year, they have to be in the basement. They have to be in that basement. So, let's start talking about these Arizona Wildcats. What do you say?
You got
Boom. There you go. I'm sorry. I had to figure this button out.
Thinking we were going to get the Wildcats chant here.
Oh, we can do that too. Good call.
Let's get the vibes going.
Look, the non-con. First off, Patty C. This is another thing. To hit on the non-con. They because the Pac-12 folded. Arizona is taking on Kansas State as a non-conference game. Baylor's taking on Utah as a non-conference. Remember they played last year in the non-con. That is a return game. Those are non-conference games. So maybe that's what you're not seeing also.
Yeah, that's true. Those are big time games.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So because of that already folding, you couldn't go out and find a new opponent. They just decided to keep it as a non-con game. Arizona's non-conference is Bronco Mendenhall in New Mexico. They do get a week 0 game. The Lobos do. Then the Lumberjacks of Northern Arizona. Then they are taking a trip to the Little Apple. Take Kansas State and Manhattan, Kansas. That is the non-con. Still not a. I thought this was the third easiest. If you're watching on YouTube, you see that yellow thing, yellow circle saying Big 12 14th strength of schedule. I had this as the third easiest schedule in the conference. NC Nick, did you rank these? Did you have this as a?
I did rank. And funny that you mentioned it. I had it 14th also. So I think this is definitely on the easier.
Broke up there.
Getting that Ramada in connection.
Yes, that red roof in connection.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we got you. Yeah.
I also had it ranked 14th.
The conference games, remember, so the conference games, they open up with a bye, then they go at Utah, home to Texas Tech, at BYU, home to Colorado, home to West Virginia, at UCF, a second bye week, and then home to Houston, at TCU, and then the Territorial Cup in Tucson to end the season. To me, what do we say is that shitty tier? Oh, it's Arizona State, it's Houston. They don't have Cincinnati on there, but you did get 2 that you say, okay, I thought it was still one of the easier schedules. Now the road trips, so you can make a case going to Manhattan, Kansas, going to Salt Lake City, going to Provo, going to the Moon Bounce down there in Orlando and Fort Worth. Pretty lit environments, all 5 of them. Patty C, what'd you make of the schedule?
I don't want to drive our listeners away, but I'm going to say this. It is going to be very hard to differentiate between these schedules. And so we are going to be, I think for me at least, using a fine tooth comb to try and find some, major differences here. I will say your top 40 ranking here, you only show 3 teams, that being Kansas State, Utah, and West Virginia. 2 of those being on the road for an Arizona team that is, probably hoping for a fringe playoff berth, maybe as a at large. I think those 2 games and a couple others on here, maybe at TCU, at UCF, I don't see the playoffs in the future for them. But, there aren't any, they don't have like 10 super hard games on here. So, if they are better, then if they maintain their level of play, then Arizona could navigate this schedule. But otherwise, I think they're going to have like 3 losses at least by the end of the season.
Yeah,
I think most of the teams will. I mean, if you look at it, I guess we're saying Utah's the best team.
Or Kansas State. I'd say Utah or Kansas State.
Yeah, I still see Kansas State probably dropping at least 3 games. Maybe Utah has a chance to only drop 1 or 2. So they're probably the biggest threat for a playoff berth. But I think there's going to be a lot of carnage here because there's not, the best of the conference isn't that much better than the middle of the conference. Just look at Oklahoma State. 2 years ago, they weren't very good at all. Last year, they kind of bubbled up and things, went the right way, and they won 9 games, 10 games, something like that. But I wouldn't say Oklahoma State is head and shoulders better than Iowa State or TCU or West Virginia.
Yeah, you're right. Now, I'll say this, Patty C. Also, to me, what makes it the easiest schedule and why I think you should be able to see this here, they only have 5 away games. Like I said, most of the teams in this conference play 6. I think there was only 2 that played 5 away games. They also only played 10 Power 5s. To me, that is why I had this as the 14th ranked schedule. So the third easiest in the Big 12. Let's move along to the Sun Devils. First thing I noticed about the Sun Devils, they don't have an FCS. Arizona State's non-con is home to Wyoming, home to Mississippi State, and at Texas State. What an away game there. See, to me, Patty C, you're talking about non-con.
Yeah.
I think that's a really challenging non-con. Texas State looked really good last year. Mississippi State, now who knows? They were ass last year. They bring in Jeff Lebby. Maybe he can get that thing going. And then Wyoming is a bowl team. So to me, that's a challenging non-con, much tougher than a lot of other schools we've done thus far, in my opinion.
Fair. All three of those teams pose a threat, especially when you consider Texas State is on the road.
At the same time, they're all winnable, though. Like, if you're telling me Arizona has at Kansas State as one of their out-of-conference games, well, that's a lot tougher than any of these three games.
True, but to me, Arizona has Northern Arizona. No one is even. I mean, everyone would win. I'd lay 28 with them against Northern Arizona. So you don't have that for sure win. Also, New Mexico, pretty shitty. So I would argue this would be a lot harder.
Arizona has between the 6-9 conference games we reviewed so far, Arizona has the hardest at Kansas State, but then Arizona State has number 2, 3, and 4, and then Arizona has 5 and 6, I think.
Yeah, and don't forget here. How about the back-to-back away stretch? Because they're playing at Texas State. They stay in the state of Texas and go to Lubbock week 4. That's their opener in Big 12 play. After that, they get a bye week. Then they're home to Kansas, home to Utah, at Cincinnati. Nice to get Cincinnati on the schedule. Then a bye week, and then at Oklahoma State, then home to UCF, then at Kansas State, then home to BYU, and at Arizona. I mean, the final 5 games here are fucking brutal, right? Patty C's got that quality connection going on there. He's in Afghanistan.
We are all going tonight.
Yes. I mean, I thought this was a hard schedule. I actually had a hard time. This is where I will agree with you, Patty C. Is like,
dude, I got the max headroom thing going on.
Yes.
Now.
I think you could have this as high as 4th. I had it. I mean, you could have it as far back as 10 or 11, but I ranked it 9th. I don't know. I mean, look, to me, when you got to go into Lubbock, Stillwater, and Manhattan, that's tough.
Well, they get all 4 of the toughest teams. You know, I just laid that out. Houston, Oklahoma State, Arizona, and Utah. I'm sorry. Utah, Oklahoma State, Arizona, Kansas State.
Yeah.
They get all 4 of them.
Now let me ask you this: where would you put Kansas if Jalen Daniels is healthy? He's coming back. Now the only thing with Kansas is they are not playing home games this year. They are playing at Arrowhead / Kansas City, like a soccer stadium in Kansas City, Kansas, and Kansas City, Missouri. So that might really affect their season. But I do think Kansas has been building for this. And could be a contender in this conference, but I think this one's clearly harder than Arizona's. Would you guys agree?
Completely. I had this at 8, but I mean, looking at it now, I mean, maybe it deserves to be a little bit higher because this is a pretty tough slate here.
Yeah, I mean, look, I said there was a point where I had it 6, and then I was like, to me, anywhere between 5 and 10 is where it falls. Patty, see anything else you want to say about the Sun Devils?
Well, I'll say this: as far as the conference slate's concerned, we don't anticipate. I'm guessing you guys agree with me on this. Arizona State will be a real contender. You know, they haven't been great lately. For teams like that, for teams chasing a championship, we always say you want your hard games at home, right? Because you can win your tough road games because you're a superior team. When you're trying to just go bowling, it's nice to have your easy games at home and your tough games on the road. And that's kind of what they have in conference. I guess with the exception of Utah, but Oklahoma.
But Utah has been horrible in Tempe. That's one of the hardest places for Whittingham. I feel like he's had a lot of struggles in Tempe historically.
So maybe they're able to get a home win there, but at Oklahoma State, at Kansas State, at Arizona, those are 3 tough games, and they get them on the road. They're probably going to lose those games anyway. Meanwhile, UCF is winnable at home. BYU is winnable at home. Maybe even Kansas is winnable at home. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, maybe. Yeah, I'd say if you catch them the right spot. Now, what I do love about going through the Big 12 and the new Big 12 is, I mean, not that the old Big 12 didn't have this, but is every crowd awesome? I was trying to think, what's the worst crowd?
Is it Arizona State?
I was thinking Arizona. I think Arizona State does a better job packing it.
I mean, Kansas is a little bit of a Johnny come lately deal.
What about Houston?
That maybe, but I know back when they had Tom Herman, I feel like they were packing it.
Nippert's lit, but it's only like 45 or 50,000, right? Or 40, maybe even thousand. So, it seems like it's a home field advantage, but it's not like you're getting a massive, intimidating environment necessarily.
Yeah. All right, let's shift on over to the next school in the alphabet, the Baylor Bears. Oh, I mean, I had this one as one of the hardest schedules. First off, I know that non-con they get an FCS in Tarleton State, but their other non-con, like I said, at Utah is a non-conference game. In Salt Lake City, one of the hardest places to win in America for my money. And then home to Air Force. Air Force just beat them in a bowl game, I feel like 2 years ago. That is a challenging non-con, in my opinion, Patty C.
Sorry, I'm trying to get my screen worked out. I'm a floating head right now.
Why don't you just try to hop out and hop back in and see if that does it?
Yeah, let me do that. You guys take over for a minute.
It kind of helped for me. Okay. I'll answer that question, Colby. Yes, I mean it is a very challenging non-con because at Utah is the hardest non-conference game in this entire conference. So and yeah, I mean Tarleton's the gimme, but Air Force, that's probably like a 65-45 game.
Dude, they could start 1-4.
55-45.
They could start 1-4 because to me, like getting you at Utah, then you get the triple option Air Force before going to the pass happy Colorado Buffaloes and then home to BYU. And then Ames. Then you go to Ames. I thought that was a very tough start to the season. I'm fascinated by this schedule though. I think it's a very hard schedule. Once again, if you look at it, they don't get Cincinnati. They do get Houston, but it's at Houston. And to me, that's kind of one that they want. Like Houston will get up for that because they weren't a part of, the Big 12 before, and getting one of the P5s to come down to Houston, I think is a much harder game than perhaps many would think. They end the season with Kansas, but yeah, I mean, you look at the road environments: Salt Lake City, Boulder, Ames, Lubbock, Morgantown, and then Houston, where like I said, I think Houston will get up for that one. Like the fans will all get up for that one. I think that's a really tough road schedule. What would you think about what I just said there?
I agree. I mean, just looking at the top 6 games, I think they'd be lucky to go 3-3. And that probably is the same thing for the back half of the schedule. So, but yeah, you're right. You mentioned earlier, Baylor can out of nowhere pop up and have a 9 or 10 win season. Looking at this schedule and looking at Baylor the last 2 years, I don't think that's going to happen. I think they'd be fortunate to go 6-6.
They did hire Gary Patterson as a defensive assistant.
I don't know if defense was a problem with Aranda last year. It might have been, but I'm going to take a look at the stats. But Gary Patterson, at the very least, has added some intrigue to that game.
Yeah, Patty C, what do you make of that schedule though? I thought this was one of the harder ones in the entire Big 12. Like I said, all of those road environments, because I think the Houston game, that's the weakest of the road environments, but I think Houston wants that. I think Houston wants Baylor to come to Houston. They were before, if they ever scheduled this game, they'd have to go to Waco. You know what I mean? So I think this is a very hard schedule. And I think, Dave Aranda Chip Kelly might be the next head coach of Baylor.
I don't think he goes down. What is he? West Coast and Northeast exclusive so far in his career. So that would be interesting. Him down in Texas, but let's see. I mean, the Utah game. You said that's being played where?
That's a non-con. You see it right there. It's at Utah, buddy. Week 2.
It's at Well, I know. Yeah. I thought that. What was the one you mentioned was down in Houston? Or
the Houston game, week 13. Yeah,
there we go. Okay, whoa!
You remind me of a homeless person. There was a homeless person in Santa Monica the other day that came up to me, and I was walking with my mom, and I was walking my dog, and this woman comes up to me, and she's just like completely looks like she's just done all the meth in Southern California, and she's like, "How old's your dog?" And I'm like, 8 years old. She goes, "When was your dog born?" And I go, 8 years ago. Isn't that crazy? 8 fucking years ago.
Well, I looked like
yeah.
I was on a second ago on the screen, and that's what I was dealing with while you guys were talking. So forgive me if I missed a little bit of what you were saying. I thought you were talking about the non-conference slate. You skipped to the end of the schedule. Yes, going to Houston.
Well, I don't get.
I think all of them. I think all of them are. All those road trips are tough, in my opinion.
The number.
I had this ranked at number 7, Colby.
Wow. Okay.
So it's hard, but like you said, it's such a close between like some of these teams. Like it could probably be from anywhere from 3 to 10.
Again, with every team in the Big 12 being decent but not great, most of the conference slate is a bit of a wash. When you come to non-conference, having a road trip to Utah, no fun. Even hosting Air Force in the triple option, we know how Texas teams do against the triple option, typically terribly. And so I think that's maybe 2 losses right off the bat. You know, obviously they should beat Tarleton State at home to open the season. Baylor, by the way, I looked it up, number 113 overall defense by yards per game in the nation last year. Maybe bringing Gary Patterson in will help.
Yes.
But it's a hard
Don't
schedule.
forget, Baylor lost to Texas State at home to begin the season last year.
And they
So
gave
they
up
can
a
certainly
gigantic,
lose to Air
Force. No, they lost to Air Force like 13 months ago in a bowl game.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Folks, before I get along to the BYU Cougars, I want to tell you that the college football experience is brought to you by Hall of Fame Bets. Yes, win bigger by betting smarter this NBA season with Hall of Fame Bets, the sports betting analytics platform for parlays, player props, and game lines. Research every NBA and soccer bet with historical stats and data. Stop betting in the dark and join over 30,000 users researching with Hall of Fame Bets to craft more intelligent, data-driven parlays. Download the Hall of Fame Bets app or visit HOFBets.com. Use that promo code SGPN to get 50% off your first month today. Start researching, start winning with Hall of Fame Bets. All right. Yeah, GBO Farm says, why even have an FCS in the Big 12? What? Well, they play 9 conference games, buddy. All right, they play 9 conference games. I think that I think this is a lot harder than a lot of the Big Ten schedules we broke
South
down.
Dakota State and North Dakota State might as well be ACC teams in their non-conference. You know,
the SEC loads up on FCS teams. I don't understand that comment, GBO Farms.
Well, he's saying the SEC is allowed to because they have some elite teams.
Yeah. Well, let's be honest. Texas has only won the Big 12 once in the past 12 years, right? Or 14 years, I think, right? Or is it 14 years? And Oklahoma hasn't sniffed it in a little bit there. Let's jump to the BYU Cougars, the 1983 national champion, or 84 national champions. This is I thought another really hard schedule. And this is another one. Southern Illinois is a good FCS program. They beat Northern Illinois a year ago in the MAC. To me, that's way better than like if you put them in the MAC, they're a bowl team. I think they're a bowl team. You put them in the MAC. So you're home to Southern Illinois. You're at SMU. You're at Wyoming. Love that rivalry back on there. That's one of the most played matchups between both schools. Love BYU at Wyoming back on there, and I actually love the SMU matchup too. You got the religions going at it.
Always fun.
What do you make of that non-con, Patty?
I didn't know BYU Wyoming was a highly played rivalry, but it's a border battle, right?
Yes, that is a border battle. There we go.
You
Patty
know, I
C
love
in the
that.
house.
It's uniform porn. You know,
That is uniform porn. That is truly uniform porn.
And I feel like both those schools have a little like mojo, you know, so that's a fun one for sure.
NC Nick, your thoughts of that non-con?
It's very hard to. I believe there's only 2 teams in the Big 12 that have 2 of their 3 non-con games on the road. Colorado is the other one, and I think BYU and Colorado have maybe the 2 toughest schedules in the whole conference, because I know you haven't got to their conference slate yet, but they play all 4 of the toughest teams that I laid out previously.
Yeah, I mean, so the conference play opens week 4, home to Kansas State, then at Baylor, then a bye week, then home to Arizona, then home to Oklahoma State. You got to love at least getting K-State, Arizona, and Oklahoma State in Provo. Then they head to UCF. They get a bye week before the Holy War as they head to Salt Lake City, and then they're home to Kansas, at Arizona State, and then the Battle of the Cougs to end the season as Houston comes to Provo. I thought it was a ball buster schedule. I think you could argue this as one of the toughest.
Yep, agreed.
Patty C.
Yeah, it's tough. I'm still a little bit focused on that Wyoming game. This Jay Sawvell, that's the new head coach taking over. I guess he was the defensive coordinator since 2020 there. So that's a tough game. I mean, at SMU, the fact that both of those are road games, those are dangerous for BYU. That's a tough start to the season. Then Kansas and Baylor. I mean, shit, out of that, there's a chance they're 1-5. Or 1-4, I should say. I don't think Southern Illinois at home presents much of a threat, but like you say, it could be a 2-possession or 1-possession game even. And then boom, Arizona, Oklahoma State at UCF. Yeah, that's a tough ass schedule, man. That's a tough ass schedule, start to finish.
I'd say they're probably 3-2 going into that bye.
Another thing is you'd want to play Houston early. By the time Fritz has them on week 14, you're sitting there saying, fuck, like that. By that point, you're almost into year 2. So they'll probably be playing a lot better. You want to get the new coaches early on. So maybe there's something to getting Wyoming week 3, but no, it's still in Laramie. And
there's continuity in that hire.
Yeah. Well, and
we know what happens in Laramie.
Even before
away
Craig
teams
Bowl,
lose.
Yeah. Even before Craig Bowl, teams had fits going up to Laramie. So I could see that being an L for the Cougs. Yeah, I thought that was one of the harder ones. Let's go next to Patty C's boys. We want a breakdown on this one, Patty C. I had this as a favorable schedule. I thought this was.
Yeah, this is a great schedule.
I have it easiest in the conference. Easiest in the whole conference.
I had it in the mix to me. The only thing to me was they did play 6 away games. So I had the 2 teams that played 5 away games as the easiest. But
hear me out here.
Yeah.
3-0, maybe 4-0 start.
They beat Pitt last year. Satterfield beat Pitt last year
on the road.
He did lose to Miami, Ohio last year.
Yeah, but they should have beaten. They should have won that game. They fucked around,
and they lost a ton of production. Like they were a senior-ridden team, so Miami, Ohio should regress some.
Yeah, and Cincinnati was, should be a lot better in year 2.
So the non-con, if you listen to this on the audio side, Towson, home to Pitt at Miami, Ohio, there at Jaegerbaum Stadium in Oxford, Ohio. I did think it was one of the easier non-cons. NC Nick, what'd you think of there?
Completely. Yes. Only 3 of them. And the road trip is a team that beat Cincinnati last year, but at Miami of Ohio isn't the worst road trip in the world. Towson's not any good. Pitt struggled mightily last year. So I think this is one of the better non-cons in the entire conference.
2.5 wins, I would say, is your over-under for the non-con slate. Am I wrong there?
Yeah, I think you're right.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you should.
Maybe I'm giving them a little more credit in a home environment against Pitt. Maybe they should be dogs in that game.
I'll be honest. You gotta love the home schedule. They could go undefeated at home this year. Houston, in conference. Houston, Arizona State, West Virginia, TCU.
Very winnable.
All winnable. Yep.
Yeah.
They'll be coming after a bye.
Yeah.
The Bearcats dodge Utah, Arizona, and Oklahoma State. So if you look at that schedule, I say the one guaranteed loss is most likely at Kansas State. Everything else is winnable.
Yeah. I mean, I would think, I mean, I know the Moon Bounce and Boulder, I think will be tough, and same with Ames, but yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
At Texas Tech is tough also.
At Texas Tech is tough. Yeah.
You can't tell me that's a guaranteed loss.
True.
Bowling in year 2.
Bowl. That's a Tuberville Bowl. He left Texas Tech to be Cincinnati's head coach when they were in the AAC.
I don't know if there's any bad blood boiling over still from that one.
Yeah, I thought that one though. Patty C, what's your final record projection right there? They going bowling?
I mean, off the top of my head, I think bowling is a possibility. I have to see what happens at quarterback. I have no idea what to expect from this team. Last year was friggin' ugly. So whatever. I'm off betting on Cincinnati this year. Don't believe a word I have to say if last year taught you anything.
Well, next let's jump over to We Coming. All right, the Colorado Buffaloes. I mean, don't I have a little song for that? I think I do.
Look out, just watch him go. Down to Buffalo. Oh no, it's a guy on
right, the Buffs non-con, hilarious. Home to North Dakota State, at Nebraska, and at Colorado State. Love the fact that you have two rivals and another Buffalo school, the Bison. That makes it super fun to me. Probably my favorite non-con of theirs in a while. Back-to-back away in the non-con. That's hilarious.
Against arch rivals.
Yes. But then, I mean, what do you make of the non-con? Obviously, North Dakota State was a team that has won 1,000 national championships in the past 1,000 years, and they're always good. And what's surprising, I know they lost their coach to USC. I actually think that might be a blessing in disguise for North Dakota State. They brought in Wyoming's offensive coordinator, who was their old OC under Craig Bowl, and a lot of their players that they thought were going to go pro or transfer, or not even go pro, but elected to use the extra eligibility, come back to Fargo. That makes it a dangerous game. Week 1. What do you make of that non-con, NC Nick?
I think it's one of the hardest in the conference. I mean, there's 2 road trips, and you could say Nebraska and Colorado State weren't very good teams last year. They were both hovering around 500 or not quite. But still, those are, especially both being rival games, I think it's one of the toughest, because all 3 games, I mean, you got to show up. And I don't see Colorado going 3-0. They're probably going 2-1 if they can get revenge at Colorado State. Maybe they drop the game in Lincoln.
Maybe. I mean, yeah, they could go 1-2. They could go 3-0. I don't know. I need to see what Nebraska's at with Rule. I actually think Norvell in year 3, I'm kind of bullish on. But
I'm looking at Norvell's previous head coaching stint. Obviously, as a head coach, it was only Nevada, but 3-9 in year 1, 8-5 in year 2, but then 7-6, 7-2, 8-4. Basically, after year 1, he was rocking and rolling. Now, Colorado State was a harder rebuild, but still 3-9 in year 1, 5-7 in year 2. Maybe Colorado State is projecting towards a bowl game this year. That's not an easy game on the road. After Nebraska on the road.
Yeah.
And they also struggled out of the gates because they didn't have the right quarterback. Once they brought in Fowler Nkosi, that offense took off and Colorado State played better. So him coming back now, I think he was a freshman last year.
He was a freshman. He was a freshman last year. So
if you would expect for him to improve, and you expect for that offense to hum.
So is 0-3 a possibility in the non-con?
I mean, you can't rule it out. North Dakota State. Where would you put North Dakota State if the Big 12 added North Dakota State? I still think they're a bowl team. You know what I mean? All
right. Well, here's a better question. What's more likely, 0-3 or 3-0?
I think 3-0 is more likely, just because the talent level that he's brought in. Remember last year, he brought in all those faces, all those, and they didn't have the depth. Year 2, they had the number 1 transfer portal class again this year. So to me, that's going to start to pay off at some point. The conference schedule, home to Baylor.
Real quick before we move on, I know we got to get to the conference slate, but is there a more interesting week 1, contrast of styles of the model of consistency of North Dakota State? Like you said, the Bison that they are coming and playing the Buffs. The model of turnover. And bringing in talent and hired guns left and right. If nothing else, it's great, television. But I think you're right. I think Colorado is probably talented enough, and now with some continuity with Shedeur Sanders and the other guys, all playing together, you got to favor Colorado there.
Let me ask you guys this: is Colorado State the easiest of the non-con games? Because North Dakota State, I believe, played at Colorado State, or maybe that was South Dakota State, and whooped their ass a couple years ago. I forget if it was NDSU or South Dakota State, but
I still think the home game is the easiest one.
Yeah,
probably, especially because NDSU has regressed and Colorado State seems like they're getting better. But I think that's about a wash. And I think at Nebraska, year 2 at Rule, all 3 of them are kind of similar, in terms of a challenge.
Yeah. The conference slate, home to Baylor, at UCF, primetime, going back to Florida. Then they get a bye week, then home to Kansas State, then at Arizona, then home to Cincinnati, then they get a bye week, then they head to Lubbock, then home to Utah, then at Kansas, and then home to Oklahoma State. Let me tell you this. I'll say this. I had Colorado scheduled 6th hardest, and I had a hard time mainly because I like the fact they get their toughest opponents at home, in my opinion. Utah, Kansas State, Oklahoma State are all in Boulder. And to me, that's what you want. You want your toughest games there. I kind of like the road schedule. I mean, I don't like the non-conference back-to-back away, but in conference at UCF, okay, that's a tough environment, but I think that's a winnable game. At Arizona, to me, with bringing in Brent Brennan, I think Brent Brennan's a good coach, but how fast can he make it work with all this turnover? You know, they still lost a bunch of guys in the portal too. Then at Texas Tech after a bye week, winnable. And then even at Kansas, that's at Arrowhead. That's not in Lawrence. So I think it's a favorable road schedule within the conference. Would you guys agree to that?
Yes, but that's probably the only thing they have going for you, because they do play all 4 of the toughest teams. And when you add that to a really hard out of conference schedule, I actually have the Buffaloes as the hardest in the whole Big 12.
Wow.
I mean,
you know,
how do you see? What do you think?
I think you may be onto something as far as the non-conference slate. I think it may be the hardest in the whole Big 12, but we're right there in that conversation. I think the way it sets up from a flow standpoint in terms of like, they don't have a back-to-back road. There are some
they do have a back-to-back to road in the non-con.
In the non-con.
Yeah.
But as far as in the conference, a bye before 2 of their tougher games, the home game against Kansas State, the road trip to Texas Tech. I think they, you know, if Deion Sanders is able to, I guess, manage their emotions and press the right buttons at the right time, they could get up for the right games and have a pretty good year here.
Last thing I'll say is look at the last 4 games. At Texas Tech, Utah, at Kansas, Oklahoma State. That's a rough stretch.
That is tough.
That is the tough end of the season. Yeah.
All right. Look, before I get to the next team, actually, no, wait, we're an hour in. Let's jump to the Houston Cougars. Willie Fritz is coming to. I mean, first off, I had this one as one of the harder non-cons. No FCS opponent. They're taking on UNLV, who played for the Mountain West Championship, even though I don't buy in that they were the second best team in the Mountain West. They still played for the championship game. Then they're at Oklahoma, and then home to Rice, who beat them last year. That's a tough. I mean, Rice was a bowl team. All 3 non-con
all 3
teams,
were,
yeah. That to me might be the best. Actually, I think my favorite we haven't mentioned yet, but this is a very hard non-con. This is what I'm saying is comparing this to a lot of the Big Ten teams, some of the ACC teams, some of the SEC teams. I would argue that this non-con is harder than a lot of the other ones.
Yeah, I agree. It's all 3 games are going to be challenging, and one of them is at Oklahoma. This is one of the toughest conference schedules, out of conference schedules in the conference.
You know, and I can sympathize with someone like GBO Farms looking at it, because at first glance to me, outside of Oklahoma, a home game against UNLV and a home game against Rice seem like guaranteed victories. But like you said, UNLV played in their conference championship, in the Mountain West Conference Championship. That's no small potatoes.
Yeah, and they swept Vanderbilt. They swept Vanderbilt over the past 2 years. They went to Nashville and they beat them last year. So get this SEC bullshit out of here. Let's go.
And also,
right?
Rice beat Houston last year.
Yeah.
I mean that. Yeah, I think you got to
talk about a border battle. That's within the same damn city.
And they added EJ Warner. They got EJ Warner in the portal. They got better. They got
Hall
better
of Fame
this
bloodlines.
Year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 2-1 is my projection, but I could see them dropping one of those 2, and a 1-2 start would be a bad start for them.
Yeah, well, especially that Fritz with the brand new coach. Barry Odom's got the leg up.
Yeah.
They could easily go 1-2. Conference play starts week 4. They head to Cincinnati. You got to like that. Then they're home to Iowa State. Hey, those are 2 winnable games right there. Then they head to Fort Worth to take on TCU. Then they get a bye week. Then they're at Kansas. Then home to Utah and home to Kansas State. That's a tough little stretch there. Then they get a bye week. Then they're at Arizona. Then home to Baylor, and they end the season in Provo. I thought it was one of the hardest schedules in the Big 12. I know they get Cincinnati, but they don't get Arizona State, who you said you wanted. And I think it's a tough schedule all in all. With when you add the non-con to it, you know, this is a team that plays 6 away games, and to me, most of them are tough environments. You know, maybe you don't say the Cincinnati one, but at Oklahoma is really tough. At TCU can be tough. At Kansas, I guess at Arizona, but they're good. And then obviously in Provo, late November 30th. Come on, that's going to be a tough game. It's going to be cold as fuck. NC Nick, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a brutal slate. I have it fourth toughest. It looks like you had it fifth toughest. So it's right up there. It's going to be a challenge for Houston to go bowling. What was Houston's record a year ago? Do we have that? They were
5-7, if memory serves me correct.
They were 4-8. 4-8.
Okay.
I think they can maybe get that fifth win, maybe get a sixth win, go bowling, but it's going to be challenging.
Yeah, they're playing a bunch of teams that are at least slightly better than they are. That 3-game stretch between byes, Kansas, Utah, Kansas State. Ouch. Let me say this. I have to sit here and eat your disrespect of Cincinnati, and I can't really say anything, but a road trip to Nippert had been, pretty much a hornet's nest for a lot of teams for a long time. Scott Satterfield traditionally improves year to year, so maybe that's not such an easy trip. Maybe you aren't so thankful you have
I
to go to Nippert.
still think you won it in the first month where it's not cold if you're in Houston. You know
Probably,
what I mean? Like if you had it on the back half of the schedule, I think it'd be a lot harder.
Does Willie Fritz go bowling year one?
I'm gonna say yes. I'm gonna say they go 6-6.
No. I'm gonna say no.
I think if I had to pick one, I think they go 5-7.
All right, let's hop on over and talk about the Iowa State Cyclones. This is a team I think everyone should be excited about, considering what happened with that gambling situation. They started so many freshmen, and they almost ended up in the Big 12 championship game. Matt Campbell, I thought, did his best coaching job, in my opinion, of his life last year. Starting Rocco Becht, Anthony Becht's son. Jarrell Brock getting kicked off the team. They lost a bunch of players, and now those young players, providing they don't hit the portal, which is always a thing.
Was last year the year that they were getting screwed left and right, like by the refs, or was that a couple years ago? I'm drawing a blank.
No, they got screwed. I thought in a couple games.
I think
last
that was
year.
a couple. I think it was 2 years ago though, when I think we were all on the over. And they ended up only winning maybe like 3 or 4 games that year. I'll pull it up real quick.
Yeah, they did struggle. They had a
last
bunch
year
of
7-6, but I mean similarly, like with the Ohio game, wasn't that like a field goal that was?
The field goal went in. It should have went to overtime. The field goal went in. You're right. And they
Iowa
ruled
was
it no
a 7-point loss.
Yeah.
Kansas was a 7-point loss.
Yeah. So go back down to 2022. They only won 4 games. They had, a 7-point loss against Baylor, a 3-point loss to Kansas, a 1-point loss to Kansas State, 3-point loss to Texas. I don't need to go on and on, but they had so many 1-score losses.
Well, that's the thing. Last year, when you add in the fact that they had all those guys suspended, to me, I thought it was an unbelievable coaching job. And remember, with like 2 or 3 weeks left, they had a shot at making the Big 12 championship. The non-con is North Dakota, the Fighting Hawks. They did make the FCS playoffs a year ago, but Tommy Schuster, the starting quarterback, transferred to Michigan State. That might hurt. Then they are at Iowa for the Cy-Hawk Trophy. And then they get a bye week and then home to Arkansas State. I thought one of the easier non-con, schedules in the Big 12. Would you guys agree to that?
Well, with the exception to the road trip to Iowa, which is almost a guaranteed L. But should be.
They won the last time. They won the last time in Iowa City.
It's gonna be like a 3-point game, so it could go either way.
I was under the impression that they always lost in Iowa City, but yes, it's usually close. But I guess if they won the last time they were there, then maybe not.
I would still.
I think
Iowa,
when you have 2 of the 3 games basically guaranteed wins, I think it's a pretty good out of conference schedule.
I agree.
By good, I mean easy.
Yeah, then they open up conference play. Although Arkansas State did go to a bowl game last year somehow, some way. They do open up conference play week 5 at Houston, then home to Baylor, then at West Virginia, then home to UCF. Then they get a bye week, then home to Texas Tech, then at Kansas, but it's not really at Kansas. It's at Arrowhead, then home to Cincinnati, then at Utah. The final 2 games, absolutely brutal. At Utah and home to Kansas State, Farmageddon. I actually think they could be a player. If you want to get a future on them to play in the Big 12 championship, I think it is a very favorable schedule. I think, you look at who cares about the Iowa game. Let's say they lose the Iowa game. Who cares, right? At Houston, I would favor them. Home to Baylor, I would favor them. At West Virginia, that's one where I would favor West Virginia, but it wouldn't shock me if they won that one.
Sure.
UCF coming to Ames, I think they could win that. They get a bye week. Texas Tech coming to Ames. I think they could win that. I think getting Kansas in Arrowhead is huge.
That's massive. That is massive.
That could be like a 50-50 crowd. That's Missouri there. So
then they come out of the bye with essentially two and a half home games. You know, if you consider the bye or the neutral site a half home game, only one road game in the real road game in the last half of the schedule.
I think it's worth taking a future on Iowa State to get to the Big 12, just to, almost like Louisville last year. I think the schedule sets up nice for them. You might see me sprinkle a little bit on that. NC Nick, your thoughts?
I 100% agree. I have it exactly where you have it, 13th hardest. So what is that? 4th easiest. This team was 6-3 in conference last year, so they were just one game out from making the Big 12 championship last season. So I think they're definitely a player to make it this year.
No. Yeah. How did they finish 2023? I guess we're hit and miss week to week, but their losses were, the Memphis Bowl loss. I don't know how much to take away from that.
That was a home game for Memphis too. That's bullshit.
That's true, but it's still Memphis. I guess Memphis was pretty good last year. If Iowa State has a nice offseason and Matt Campbell can do some serious development and get the team ready like he normally does, I think this is a schedule that, there's not an unwinnable game on it. Am I right?
Utah.
I guess at Utah.
Yeah. I like it though. I like their chances to get to the Big 12 championship. Let's move along and actually let's end side A here on the college football experience. If you're watching on YouTube, stay put. If you're on the audio side, make sure you check out the B side of this where we break down the rest of the Big 12 teams on the college football experience. So remember, as always, folks, to let it ride. All right, we are back on the Big 12 college experience with the B side of the Big 12. You can watch this. We have nice little graphics, all that good shit. Get on over to youtube.com/the college experience. Just got done with Iowa State, so we went alphabetically. So if you're trying to hear about Cincinnati's, Colorado's, BYU's, Baylor's, Arizona State's schedule, Houston's, all that available on the A side of things. But let's jump on over to the Kansas Jayhawks. Unfortunately, like I said, no home games as they're building they're renovating their stadium. So no true on-campus games at home for Kansas.
They didn't want to pull a Vanderbilt and have some cranes and some crews in the background.
Some guy working a Bobcat while the game's going on. Well, the non-con is home to Lindenwood, at Illinois, and home to UNLV. Is UNLV trying to get in the Big 12, scheduling all these games? It's dangerous though. First off, Kansas and UNLV played in a wild ass bowl game this past year. Now, granted, no Jalen Daniels. Kansas ended up prevailing, but it was a ton of offense. That could be tricky because it's in Kansas City, Kansas, not Lawrence.
Don't sell me this bucket of shit. This is an easy night. I guess you got to give that road trip to Illinois a little bit of credibility, but Kansas, the way they've been playing under Leipold, hosting UNLV, that should be a shoe-in for a W, right?
For sure. And
that was a close bowl game though for a while, man. They played in the bowl game just in December.
Illinois was only 5-7 last year also. So I think this is, granted it is on the road. I think this is one of the easier non-cons.
I would disagree. I think Barry Odom in year 2, UNLV could be even better. And the fact you don't have a home game there, that is not a home game.
They're still going to have a whole crowd.
Yeah.
It's not like UNLV is going to show up.
That's fair. That's
UNLV
fair.
football fans.
But I just think how many college kids are going to make that trip? It might not be as lit as it traditionally could be. Either way, I think at Illinois, I expect Illinois to be better this year, and I think UNLV year 2 under Odom. Now, I kind of expect regression because of the schedule last year, but at the same time, the team might be better.
Yeah.
Lindenwood's ass though. That's fair. In conference, they start week 4 at Morgantown against West Virginia, then home to TCU, then at Arizona State. Then they get a bye week, and then they're home to Houston, then at Kansas State in the Sunflower Showdown. Then they get a bye week, then they're home to Iowa State, then at BYU, then home to Colorado, and at Baylor. NC Nick, your thoughts?
I had it as the second easiest schedule in the conference. I think it lines up for a nice season. As long as they can stay healthy, I think they could win 9 games, maybe 10.
I still think it's tough though, going to Morgantown, Manhattan, and Provo.
This is a team that went what? They went 8-4 in the regular season and then won the bowl game.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
I mean,
I think that's what I think, if they repeat that, are you a little bit disappointed given all their injuries last year?
That's true. They did start a third string quarterback for a couple games.
we identified prior to previewing any of these schedules, Arizona, Oklahoma State, Utah, and who was the was it Kansas?
Kansas State.
Kansas State as the 4 toughest teams in this conference or favorites to win it. All they have
one, right?
Yeah, and it's the road trip to Kansas State. That's probably an L, but other than that, with the amount of carnage that's going to happen here, I think a Big 12 championship game, I might even say that they're a favorite at this point.
Does them playing in Arrowhead hurt their chances to getting to the Big 12 championship?
I think it does.
Yeah, I do too.
They got Kansas City Chiefs mojo, right? Especially UNLV coming to town. They're like, oh, we just watched the Super Bowl in Las Vegas. We're scared of Kansas City. Then you got to travel across. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, but
maybe Taylor Swift will attend a game.
Could be.
There you go. There you go.
Maybe her relationship with Kelsey will end and she'll start dating Jalen Daniels.
You can always hope. Look, next up, let's talk about.
Pray to God that doesn't happen.
Let's talk
Save
about those
college football.
Wildcats. Those Wildcats, man. The non-con. Remember, Arizona is a non-conference game, so they're home to UT Martin, who made the FCS playoffs. Then they're at Tulane, and then
that game got a lot easier.
Yeah, with Fritz leaving, but Summerall, I thought that was a decent hire. I thought that was a decent hire for Tulane.
True.
But still, you catch them week 2, you should be able to get that. And then home to Arizona, you get 2 new coaches and 3. Their non-con looks so much harder. 3 months ago, but it's still challenging to me. Going to New Orleans is a tricky game. Tulane's still going to be talented, and then hosting Arizona with Noah Fifita returning, and a slew of other decent players that announced they were coming back. It's a tough non-con. Would you agree?
One game is on the road against a good Tulane. It's pretty tough.
Yeah, decently tough. Not impossible by any means. I mean, like you said, I think the 2 new
expect them to be 3-0.
Yeah, me too.
They could be 2-1. It wouldn't shock me. I think that Arizona game, it's tricky, but it's in Manhattan, so they should get that one. Conference play starts week 4. They're at BYU. Then home to Oklahoma State. Then they get a bye week. Then at Colorado and at West Virginia. I mean, come on. Then you get your Sunflower Showdown. That 3-game stretch is tricky. That 3-game stretch.
Colorado's coming off a bye before that game too, so getting prime time off of a bye on the road could be tough.
3 road games out of 4 to me. At Colorado, at West Virginia. Then you have the Sunflower Showdown. Then at Houston. Then you get a bye week. Then home to Arizona State, home to Cincinnati, at Iowa State. I mean, the back end's not nice, but that middle patch where you got three road games out of 4, I think is tricky.
The fact that you dodge Utah is huge, and you also play 3 of the worst 4 teams.
So where'd you have this ranked, Nick? She's still with us? Where'd you have it?
Yes, I had it at 10th.
Huh. Okay, I guess I valued the non-con, and I also just thought the road game stretch there of 3 of 4, and even the home game is a rivalry game, so I thought that was a little tricky.
It's a little tough spot there.
Farmageddon on the last week of the season could be for a playoff spot. I could see a 10-1 start for them, or certainly a 9-2 start. And either way, I mean, I guess you kind of have to wait for conference champion. How many bids would you say the Big 12 you would expect to get in the 12-team playoff?
1 to 2.
Yeah, 1 to 2 max.
Yeah.
The problem is,
say it again. You broke up there. Say it again.
The problem is, for the Big 12 is that none of these,
Yeah, I'm sorry. You kept breaking up there, so we missed what you said there.
All right, I'll try it one more time.
This is a fucking Mel Brooks movie. Anyway, NC Nick with a great point. Trust me, it's a great point. One more time. Can you say it?
None of these teams in the Big 12.
Oh shit! This is great. This is absolutely fucking great. Yeah, I don't know what point you're trying to make. Goddamn Red Roof Ed.
Keep it moving. Keep it moving.
Anyway, folks, I want to tell you that the college football experience is brought to you by the Daytona 500 contest. Yes, rev up those engines. NASCAR's back. Check out the NASCAR Gambling Podcast. Rod Villagomez and Cody Zeeb have you covered for all things NASCAR and racing, from trucks to Cup, to IndyCar to F1. This show gives you the drivers to watch and the most profitable picks for the weekend of racing each and every week. Enter their free Daytona 500 contest with a chance to win a $100 SGPN gift card and $100 cash. Go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/Daytona. Once again, that's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/Daytona. We're also brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy has a way to play alongside your favorite fantasy players all season long. They got NBA, NHL, college football, and college basketball. Simply pick higher or lower on your favorite players' fantasy stats and cash in. You can win 100 times the amount of money you enter with some of their spicy plays. So what are you doing, folks? Watch along, make picks, and maybe make a little extra cash on Underdog's mobile app or website, underdogfantasy.com. And when you sign up with the promo code TCESGPN. Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's Underdog Fantasy promo code TCESGPN. All right, we are back on the college football experience in Kansas State. So me and NC Nick a little different on our strength of schedule here with Kansas State. Let's jump on over to the Pokes, Oklahoma State. This non-con I thought was tricky. The non-con is home to South Dakota State, who hasn't lost a game in like 7,000 years. Then home to Sam Pulled Pork Pittman in Arkansas, and then at Tulsa. I think Tulsa, Kevin Wilson year 2 could be a little trickier than some think. Little rivalry game there. That's the non-con. NC Nick, your thoughts on the non-con?
It's interesting because Oklahoma State's going to be favored in all three of them.
I don't got them 3-0.
They should win all three.
Dude, South Dakota State could beat them. Oklahoma State always starts slow.
True. True.
Especially against like FCSs.
But they're going to be favored by what? A touch?
I'd say a touchdown, but South Dakota State brings back Gronowski. That guy's been there forever.
Who is their running back that's going pro? Isaiah
Davis.
Yeah.
Davis, yeah. I think it's a tricky spot there. I bet you they slip up. I bet you they go 2-1.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I agree. 2-1, pretty likely. I mean, is the road trip to Tulsa after? I don't know. I mean, who took over as the OC at Arkansas?
They hired who did they hire? Bobby Petrino. Road rash face.
So I was gonna say a body blow from Arkansas but I guess Pulled Pork Pittman has been going pretty finesse here for a few years. So maybe Tulsa isn't the beneficiary of that. But even still, I mean, assuming they're a little bit better going in state to it, that's Tulsa's Super Bowl. So you got to be careful if you're Oklahoma State.
Then conference play starts. They are home to Utah, at Kansas State, home to West Virginia. Then they get a bye week at BYU, at Baylor, then home to Arizona State, then at TCU. Then they get a bye week and home to Texas Tech and at Colorado. The toughest teams we mentioned, Utah, Kansas State. To me, top 40 teams. I had West Virginia in there as well. That you get them all 3 in a row too. I think it's a challenging schedule there. I had it as middle of the pack, but I still think, to me, you don't really have an FCS. South Dakota State is a awesome football team, and to me, South Dakota State, Arkansas, and at Tulsa, that is a very tough non-con. You mix that in.
Let me ask you, who's better, South Dakota State or Arkansas?
I mean, I guess you would take Arkansas, but I would love to see that game.
Yeah, that would be the interesting thing. Like from a Power 5 standpoint, this South Dakota State team is as dominant, it seems like, as any of the North Dakota State teams.
They haven't lost in 2 years, right?
Yeah, they're destroying teams and decent FCS, a pretty good FCS team. So, I mean, who would you compare them to in the ACC? I don't know if we have time for this, but
yeah, I mean, South Dakota State is, I mean, I would lay it. They would be favored against Boston College, in my opinion.
Yeah. What about like Virginia Tech?
They're
Pretty
on
good
Virginia.
game there.
Yeah, I mean, if it's that lane, I'd probably take Virginia Tech, but on a neutral, I think I would take South Dakota State. At least last year's Virginia Tech. Maybe this year's will be better with them returning 11 starters. NC Nick, would you take South Dakota State to beat Virginia Tech on a neutral?
Probably not. But why are we talking ACC and Virginia Tech?
Well, I'm just
we're
trying
just
to
trying
get
to
it.
compare. He asked me Arkansas also. Are they South Dakota State against Arkansas? And I'd say that'd be an interesting game. I think you'd favor Arkansas, but not by much.
Not by much at all.
Well,
Yeah,
they still almost beat Alabama.
true. But
Arkansas, I mean, South Dakota State almost beat or did beat who they have last year? Didn't they have
beat the shit out of somebody, right? No, that was 2 years ago, right? I don't think they got one last year.
Yeah.
They beat Colorado State by like 30. I don't know. They're definitely, I would say. I mean, they've won.
They're
the
at least a
back-to-back
middle
national
of the road
championships.
Power 5 team, in my opinion.
Yes, I would agree. I even think you throw them in the Big 12.
They're
I
competitive.
mean, right now they're
everyone.
better. I would say they're better than Arizona State. They're better than Cincinnati. They're better than. You might even take them against some of the other schools.
Baylor.
I mean, I don't know. Yeah, like all in all,
That's a
I
tough
think
game.
I think it's a tough schedule. Like, hear me out on this. What is the for sure wins here? Arizona State, right?
Probably,
Maybe.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's a good chance that
Could not agree more. Woo!
Yeah,
I cut
he's
out.
having a hard time. He's having a hard time here. He thinks there's a good chance that pick Dundee.
they are 3-3.
Oh,
3-3 coming out of the first half of the schedule.
they
Interesting.
always start slow too. So I don't
Well,
know.
tough
NC Nick's
schedule
having
for
a
the
tough
folks.
time.
We're gonna see what Mike Gundy has. I guess if we're sleeping on Gundy, then maybe we should put our bets in on Oklahoma State right now.
They do bring back Olive Garden. The Olive Garden is back.
That's a huge one.
Yeah, NC Nick having technical difficulties from the Red Roof Inn or the Econo Lodge. Let's jump on over and talk about these TCU Horned Frogs. I had this as the second hardest schedule, mainly because they play 11 Power Fives. 11 Power Fives out of 12. And they got the fucking Long Island Sharks week 2. No, week 1 they're at Stanford. No, you could argue, is that really a P5? I think Troy Taylor was a good hire, and I think give him some time. Year 2, maybe they're a little bit better than what people think. Their other non-con game is home to
Let 'em
Long
cook.
Island, and then the Battle of the Iron Skillet in Dallas week 4. I thought challenge. 2 road games and a home game in the non-con. NC Nick, I don't know if you're with us still, but did you think that was hard?
I can hear you, and yes,
Yeah.
it is a hard non-con.
Yeah.
Patty C, what'd you make of the non-con?
At this point, that's 2 Power 5 road games in the
Yeah,
non-con.
that's what I mean. They got 11 Power 5s out of 12.
Yeah, and Long Island's a guarantee, but other than that, I mean, yeah, favorite games they're favored in, few and far between. I would think,
Yeah,
after
and
last year.
And then conference play, home to UCF week 3. Remember, they got the Iron Skillet week 4. Then at Kansas week 5. Then home to Houston. Then they get a bye week. Then they're at Utah. Then home to Texas Tech. Then at Baylor. Getting all, I feel like getting Texas Tech, Baylor, and Oklahoma State in a row. Hilarious because it's old. That's the old Big 12. Then week 12 bye week. Then home to Arizona. Then at Cincinnati. I think that's tricky. If you get Cincinnati, that's Satterfield basically going into year 3, and that's going to be cold. Could be a factor there. November 30th, Cincinnati, Ohio, trying to run air raid in some crazy weather potentially. So I had this as the second hardest schedule in the Big 12. Curious your thoughts on that. Nick, you with us still?
Yeah, I had it at 5th hard. Lightens up. I think the last 5 games are all winnable.
Yeah, I would say the last 5 are winnable, but I mean, I doubt they go 5-0 there, but yeah, Patty C.
Oh, I don't think so.
What happened at the quarterback position with them last year? Did Chandler? I'm drawing a blank.
No, he
on
transferred now. They're going with the freshman that looked good in a couple outings. I'm
was
drawing
it,
a blank on
Hoover?
his name. Yeah, Hoover. Yeah.
So maybe with him, at the helm, they start to resemble what they were 2 years ago more so than what they were last year. Who knows with Sonny Dykes? Either way, I think that TCU might be in for another tough year.
Yeah. Life without Patterson, huh? I guess the first year was good. Scotty Wackenheim saying, "Oh, they had all Patterson players. Of course they were good." Now you get further and further away from them. We'll see how they do. Shout out to Coach Wackenheim. Texas Tech, the Red Raiders. I had this as the easiest schedule in the Big 12. NC Nick, where'd you have this one? No. 12th. Okay. The non-con is home to Abilene Christian, at Washington State, which is awesome that they're doing this. Like I said, a lot of P5s never play in Pullman, and they got to do something for Mike Leach there. They just got to have that as a Leach bobblehead night or something.
Yeah, have a little class. Both teams.
Week 3, home to North Texas, the Mean Green. I thought, yes, Pullman's tough, but they should at least be 2-1. I thought it was one of the easier non-cons. And then, I don't know. What'd you make of the non-con, Patty C?
Well, the Wazoo game is tough on the road, obviously, but Abilene Christian and North Texas at home seem like guaranteed wins. So, not that good, not that hard.
They could go 3-0. NC Nick, what'd you make of that non-con?
If they beat Wazoo, and then they have 2 more very winnable home games, so they could start off 5.
Yes, it could start off 5-0. They're home to Arizona State, home to Cincinnati in week 4 and week 5.
Wouldn't that be the interesting development? I mean, I think when we were projecting who would be the cream of the crop of the new Big 12, Texas Tech probably overlooked in most people's eyes, but a fast start, maybe if they have a great year, Texas Tech becomes that team.
Yeah, I think
they were kind of under was like 8.5 or something. And they kind of, they didn't meet those expectations. Maybe a little bit more quietly going into the season. Maybe they have a big year.
They could. Obviously the graphic on week 5, Cincinnati State College, that's inaccurate. Everything else is accurate though. But I still think, man, at Wazoo, at Arizona, at Iowa State and TCU, and then Oklahoma State, tough. But yeah, it might be worth a shot at taking a future Joey McGuire year 3 there in Lubbock. Let's jump over and talk about the very golden UCF Knights. Their non-con is home to New Hampshire, home to Sam Houston State, who's now in the FBS. Love those 2 matchups because I think they're very, very winnable. And then at Florida in week 6, once again, Florida not a top 40 team, so I kind of love the non-con.
Game.
Yeah, I love the non-con. Now it's at the Swamp, that'll be lit, but I think this is one of the easier non-cons in all. I had this as the second easiest schedule in the Big 12, and mainly because not only the non-con, but also what do we want to see? You want to see Cincinnati on the schedule. You want to see Arizona State on the schedule. Those 2 are on that schedule. But NC Nick, your thoughts of the non-con?
Look, at Florida is still hard. I don't expect UCF. It's not the hardest non-con, but I think it's pretty tough.
I just think Sam Houston was an FCS like a week ago. I think they should at least be 2-1, and I think they could easily be 3-0.
Agreed.
The conference play starts out week 3 at TCU, then they get a bye week, then home to Colorado. They got that Florida Gator matchup week 6, and then week 7 home to Cincinnati, then at Iowa State, then home to BYU, home to Arizona. What's that?
Prior to that road trip to Ames, is a 6-0 start possible for this team? I mean, the quarterback play, obviously Malzhan.
They got KJ Jefferson coming in.
Oh yeah, that's right. I was forgetting forgetting that happened.
Yeah.
So if he plays great, 6-0 does seem possible.
Definitely.
I think if you look at the schedule, like again, where are the guaranteed
losses? Yeah.
None.
Maybe
At Dub V?
Morgantown. Yeah. Maybe Morgantown is probably
Maybe
cold
Ames.
as fuck on November 23rd. But yeah,
Hosting
The flip
Utah.
side of that coin is that they probably only have 2 guaranteed wins.
New Hampshire and Sam Houston State. Correct. Maybe Cincinnati.
Yeah, they might get the better
Yeah.
of Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Still, I think Malzahn's a good coach. You bring in KJ Jefferson. That's a manageable schedule. I think it could be a nice year in Orlando.
Yeah, I had it as what, the second easiest, the UCF Golden Knights. All right, folks, before we get to the next couple ones, I want to tell you that the college football experience is brought to you by Hall of Fame Bets. Win bigger by betting smarter this NBA season with Hall of Fame Bets, the sports betting analytics platform for parlays, player props, and game lines. Research every NBA and soccer bet with historical stats and data. Stop betting in the dark and join over 30,000 users researching with Hall of Fame Bets to craft more intelligent, data-driven parlays. Download the Hall of Fame Bets app or visit hofbets.com. Use that promo code SGPN to get 50% off your first month today. Start research and start winning with Hall of Fame Bets. All right, we're back and we got a couple more left. The Utah Utes here. I had it, I went back and forth. This was another one I had a hard time getting a gauge on here. The non-con is home to Southern Utah, the Thunderbirds. A non-con matchup against Baylor in Salt Lake City. Then at Utah State in Logan. Could that be tricky? Probably not. I think they'll be 3-0 in the non-con. NC Nick?
Yeah, I think I agree. I mean, at Utah State is tricky, but they should be able to handle them. So all in all, road non-con.
Yeah, I think it's a nice non-con. I think it's one of the better non-cons. Patty, see your thoughts?
I'll say Baylor early in this season is not as ideal as getting them late in the season at home. And Baylor, Baylor almost should have beaten them last year, right?
Yes, but remember they started they didn't have Cam Rising, but yeah. I think they'll be 3-0. I think they'll be 3-0. Now they start conference play week 4, and that ends up being a back-to-back away because they were at Utah State week 3. Week 4, they're in Stillwater taking on the Mullet. Week 5, home to Arizona. Then they get a bye week. Then they head to Tempe, week 7. Then home to TCU. Then at Houston, week 9. Then they get a bye week. Then home to BYU in the Holy War. I kind of love Colorado getting Utah the week after the Holy War. Anyway, they head to Boulder week 12 after the Holy War, and then home to Iowa State, and then at UCF. I'll say this: if you look at the schedule, where's the guaranteed loss? You got to love the road schedule. Maybe Oklahoma State, maybe Colorado, maybe UCF, but they could go undefeated.
They could.
I think when you're one of the best teams in the conference, there probably isn't any guaranteed losses, for.
Yeah.
But I like the way the schedule breaks for Utah.
Yeah, me too. I think they have.
Do you think schedules they've had the last couple of years?
Say that again.
Do you think it's
easier than the last couple of years schedule? I do, because they're not in Eugene, they're not in Seattle. Yes,
I think so much rides on Cam Rising's health. I mean, they were such a much more terrible team last year than they had been in previous years.
Still, though, I would argue that like trips playing at USC or playing at Oregon or Washington or Washington State or Oregon State is harder than this. Yes, you have Stillwater, but Boulder was on that schedule the past couple of years, so you can't even count that one. Arizona State was probably on that schedule the past couple of years, so it's like, okay, replacing Stillwater with Eugene, I'd rather play in Stillwater. It's like,
what was Utah's record? This was their last year in the Big 12, or last year was, or in the Pac-12, I should say, Pac, whatever it is. So they didn't perform well. So I guess it's probably not as big of a flex if they fail in the Big 12. But still, with Cam Rising back, if the Big 12 is able to put Utah in check, that will make the rest of the Big 12 look really great, especially in comparison to the former Pac-12. But if Utah dominates, that's a bad look for the Big 12.
They're going to dominate. I think, because that schedule.
I think 10-2, 11-1.
They don't play Kansas State. I think Kansas State is like a team that could very well beat them wherever they play that game. They don't play them.
I think that might be that teams don't play each other in the regular season, and
Yeah. Yeah, you're breaking up some, but NC Nick saying he thinks Kansas State playing Utah in the Big 12 championship could be likely.
It'd be glorious.
All right, let's get to the final team here. That is the West Virginia Mountaineers. I had this as the hardest schedule. To me, when you get the non-con of Penn State, Albany, who was in the Final Four of the FCS. Yeah, I know they lost Poffenberger, but they were in the Final Four of the FCS a year ago. They did get worked by South Dakota State, but at least they made it that far. And then the backyard brawl. You're playing 11 Power Fives, and Penn State's going to be preseason top 10. And then the backyard brawl is just always crazy. Throw out the record books. I think that's the hardest non-con of any of them.
Probably.
I think I agree, and I didn't have it quite as high as Colby. I had it, but out of conference is pretty brutal.
Yeah. Then the conference play starting week 4, they're home to Kansas. Then they get a bye week. Then they're at Oklahoma State. Then home to Iowa State. Then home to Kansas State. Then at Arizona. Then a bye week. Then at Cincinnati. Then home to Baylor. Home to UCF. And then at Texas Tech. Yes, you don't have Utah on there. That's great. But I still think with getting Penn State, to me, top 40 teams that they're getting, Penn State. I know Pitt's not top 40, but that game's always insane.
Road trip to Pitt.
Yes. Yeah. Kansas is a top 40 team to me. Oklahoma State's a top 40 team to me. Iowa State's a top 40 team to me. Kansas State's a top 40 team to me. Arizona's a top 40 team to me. And then you get the rest, which may be a favorable end of the schedule.
But if they get their ass kicked on that, I mean, could Neal Brown find himself if he starts out 2-8 or 2-6 in the first 8 games?
Chip Kelly might be the next coach of West Virginia. Is what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean the benefit of having Cincy and then Baylor, UCF at home, and then at Texas Tech's a tough game either way. But still, the back end of their schedule is where it's softest. But I could see them souring on him again, even though he had a good game this year. Everyone seems to be riding the Neal Brown train. A 2-6 start, and they may all be off of it again.
Yeah. NC Nick, you think Neal Brown will be coaching at the end of the season next year for the Mountaineers?
Yeah, I think this past year Baldwin's completely failed this year, but I kind of like some of that team. So I think it's a tough schedule. Kansas State, I didn't have it as the toughest. Virginia goes bowling.
I just think you play 11 Power Fives. You play 11 Power Fives, and your FCS is a team that went to the Final Four of the FCS. That's a hard schedule. Folks, that's our show. I guess we're having some technical problems, so I don't even know that. To me, a future worth buying, Iowa State, Texas Tech. I think those two jump out. Obviously, Utah and Kansas State, I think, would be the favorites. If I had to pick what Vegas will say when they release these things, I would say Kansas State favored to play Utah in the Big 12 championship.
100%.
Maybe there's a chance Oklahoma State in there. I don't know.
I think you got to throw Kansas in the mix.
Yeah. So, but I think it's going to be fascinating. I'm excited to see the Big 12 this year, with all these new teams and just like we said, like there's no real shitty team. Maybe Cincinnati, but it's year 2 of Satterfield. They should be better.
They were a playoff team 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Or 2 years ago, whatever it was.
Yeah, I think it was 3. Folks, give Patty C a follow on Twitter at PattyC831. Give him a follow. NC Nick's on Twitter at NC__NICK. Next time he comes on this show, he will not be at the Red Roof Inn. So internet connection will be better. And I'm on Twitter at TheColbyD. Follow away. The College Football Experience is on Twitter at TCE on SGPN. Follow. And remember, youtube.com/The College Experience. Subscribe over there. All year we talk college football. We're going to be breaking down every single schedule, Sun Belt, everything, MAC, everything. Also, check out the FCS College Football Experience. We just went through every single coaching hire in the FCS. Check out that. Also, the College Basketball Experience is live every single night. We'll be back in about an hour and 20 minutes talking college hoops as the road to March Madness and what is it, Scottsdale this year heats up every night. Every night we talk college hoops there. The College Baseball Experience, the season starts this week. It's in full swing pretty much now. Go check out the College Baseball Experience. We already did ACC Pac-12, SEC previews, went through futures, fantasy drafts, everything. We got you covered on the College Baseball Experience. All of those podcasts come together on youtube.com/the College Experience. And how could I forget? Subscribe to the Big 12 College Experience. You're a Big 12 fan. We have the Big 12 specific show where we talk Big 12 football, baseball, basketball year round. Check it out. Big 12 college football, the Big 12 College Experience, hosted by Moneyline Mac and Company. Troy Tuning there in the chat. Shout out to them and check them out. And check out the Sports Gambling Podcast. They're live from Las Vegas all this week on VSiN. I will be on there. I was on there today. I'll be on there again Friday morning. Let's go. Until next time, folks, this is the College Football Experience. You better start thinking about yours. And we are out of here.
Run and shoot. We can really run and shoot.